Welcome to the First Customers Podcast. Today we have Angie Correa, a former corporate executive who worked at NBC, Yahoo, Maxim magazine, and then left the corporate world to start her own successful career coaching business. Angie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Glad to have you here. Let's start off with a little bit about your backstory. Where are you from?
So I am originally from New York City. So I was born and raised in the Bronx and lived there all of my life until about 10 years ago when I moved to Santa Monica, California.
Awesome.
Yeah.
In the Bronx, did you have any side hustles as a kid, like selling lemonade or door-to-door type?
Oh my gosh. So I babysat. Dog walked. I checked in on my neighbor's kids. I worked at I started work. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I started working when I was like 13 years old. I worked at the what is it? The rec center, little local whatever. And, worked at the front desk. I even worked in a convent in my high school, calling the nuns. I worked at the convent and made money doing that. And I had to learn their bell system.
I don't even know what that means. What do you mean you had to call the nuns about what?
Yes. But like if they got calls or they had messages, I would be there to I was basically like their assistant, but they didn't, I wasn't like calling them and like, hey, this is an old school convent. And so they had a bell system. So each nun had their own bell and I had to learn the combinations, like ding, 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 ding. They would come down and whatever it was, either visit with somebody or take a call.
Okay. And you said, so what was your very first job?
I would probably have to say at the rec center, being in camp, it was like an after school camp type of thing where I was in it. And then after I got I was in it, but I was also like, I want to do more. And so that's right before high school. And then high school was when I, switched over to the other. Yeah.
So in that's more service based.
Yeah. Always
service job. You're not having to necessarily do sales in those positions. So let's scoot forward a little bit to, what was your first business that you started or first experience getting that sales exposure?
My sales exposure came from corporate. So, actually even before corporate. So my first sales was working in retail. I worked at a Neiman Marcus store when I was in college. I worked at Nutrisystem when it was a freestanding storefront. And so I was selling weight loss programs. I was selling expensive clothes and handbags and all that stuff when I was in college. And so I learned, and I always say to this day that the experience that I learned in those two different jobs to help pay my way through school was what got me to six figures before I was even 21. And because it was all about being warm and fuzzy, it was all about building the relationship. It was all about making people feel comfortable to be able to hand over their credit card. Right. And so it wasn't ever just about the money. It was really just about the service I provided and how I made people feel. And that's, I through my entire career, I believe that that's directly correlated to how many commas you have in your bank account.
Okay. Revisit that part again. Could you tease that out? What's that key there, that secret?
Yeah. So it's where, I think a lot of people go into, let's say, and I love the example of the retail store experience, right? An environment is that, we got to get that customer so that they can spend their money on the most expensive thing so I could get that commission. Whereas I wouldn't focus so much on just the one thing that they were looking for. I would build out an entire wardrobe for somebody, but it was because I was creating and developing a relationship to have them come back each and every time. So now it's not just let me grab this quick customer and get a sale, but let me develop this relationship so that they remember me, so that they feel warm and fuzzy when they see me. And that then they're like, you know what, I don't want to work with anybody else. And it's, and that's the part where it's nowadays you don't see that as much. You don't, like, when you go shopping, I mean, think about it. When you go into any store now, it's like, what can I help you? What are you looking for? You know? And then if you're not looking for the most expensive thing, they kind of like walk away from you. If they look at you and they don't think, oh, she's got any money, you know, like it happened to me once when I was, you know, in my 30s, and I went to another store to buy a whole bunch of Louis Vuitton. It was like, I was in my corporate job at that point, and I wanted the luggage and the passport wallet and all this stuff, but I went in sweats. I always looked like a kid. And this woman didn't want to sell me anything. She didn't think I could afford it. And it was really like a fun experience, because for me, I was like, well, you're not getting my business because I don't feel good with you. And so when you use it on both sides, it's like, oh, I get to make people feel comfortable and not judge them.
Gotcha.
Right?
Right. All about building a relationship, making them feel good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately we're buying and selling all day, every day. That's just it. So there's never, like, I feel like now that and there's a book called Sell or Be Sold. So that's a great book for anybody to read that's going into actual sales. But when you think about it from the perspective of, you know, you're getting married, or you're having kids, or you're dating, or you're going on vacation with your friends, it's like, whose idea is going to be sold into the group? Right? Whose idea am I going to buy into that I'm going to want to do? Right? Like we're constantly in that kind of a conversation, and I'll either A, take the lead, or B, follow based on the depth and breadth of the relationship that I have with that person that's trying to get their point across.
That's golden. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
The human side of sales. It's not just about the ABC necessarily, to always be closing, or like always be building relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I remember getting laid off from a company once, and the CEO, and it was it wasn't even really a layoff. It was basically like a startup company, and I had been consulting for them, and I was working internally and externally. And I remember the guy was like, oh, you got to eat what you kill around here. And I was like, I just brought in like $10 million. What are you talking about? Right. But it was through the relationships that I had that I was basically handing over to his team and other departments. And I was liaisoning those relationships. I was the catalyst to even having them bring that in. But because it wasn't under my name per se, right, then he didn't value the fact that the relationships were there and opened because I had already had them. Does that make sense?
So you had brought in millions of dollars worth of business, but was it not through you as a salesperson closing the sale?
Right. Right. So this is, now I took you on a big journey. I took you on a big leap to like the end of me being in corporate, because what the other piece of like all of that stuff that I learned in retail and working in the Nutrisystem and working in all these different types of places was that the depth and breadth of the relationships that I had value. Right. And so I was brought in to basically open up a category of dollars that this particular company didn't already have. And so the way I went into it was, this is me being the liaison, right? Like I'm going to make the introductions. I'm going to support the pitch. I'm going to do all of that stuff, but I don't carry the actual number. And so on paper, it looked like I wasn't producing, but because everything was going under, different categories. So, and when I talk about categories, I mean like the automotive industry or, consumer packaged goods, like, finance, like all those different categories where I had, relationships. But for me, I was like, dude, like you're missing the whole point. Like the eat what you kill paradigm is so old.
Yeah.
I think anyway, I mean, I know a lot of people will completely disagree with me, and that's fine. But I also know that like, I remember working at one of the companies that I worked at, and the boss, VP of sales was like, you don't work as long as everybody else, right? Like my days weren't as long as everybody else. I'm like, but if you look at my deal size, I don't need to work as long because I'm doubling what anybody else is doing. more efficient.
Years building up the relationships and expertise and everything, so it doesn't take as much later.
So for their $25,000 sale, for every $25,000 sale that another person had, I was having $2 million sales.
Wow.
So I'm like, I don't need to stay late and act like I'm working hard when my deal sizes are triple everybody else's.
Yeah. Is that part of why you were kind of either got sour on corporate life or just decided to leave corporate life eventually?
No, I think for me, it wasn't so much sour as much as it was freedom, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I think the day that I realized that, the people that I was working for, and this is across the board. Some of the people that I was working for were like, they were going out golfing or they were going on these elaborate vacations, and I was still working, hard, and I'm like, oh, wait a second. If I'm not the CEO, then my salary is always going to get capped. So even as a top salesperson in a marketing, media industry at the height of media and scaling to the 7-figure mark, still was a cap for me, as opposed to being my own CEO and having my own company and then scaling 4 different products to over 7 figures each. You know what I mean? Right. So it's that was part of it. And then, it's like the time clock, like punching the clock was just like, I got, that whole, like, your value is associated with the hours that you work for me, and then you can't do anything else on the side. I think it's crazy because that's where people get sour. So I do a workshop called Prosper Where Planted, and it's specifically for people who have lost their mojo for what they're doing, have lost their excitement for the product or the company or the industry that they're in. And I want to revive where they're at by introducing the fact that they can go and create something on the side that they do on evenings and weekends. And it doesn't have to be a full-blown huge company. It could be anything. I mean, I've had clients that, are presidents or vice presidents of advertising agencies that also do party planning on the weekends for their friends and family and make $500 or something like that. That, though, is opening up the creative juices. That also is creating a secondary income that could lead to whatever you want it to lead to, depending on what's your actual end goal. Do you want more time freedom? Or do you think that this salary is what's actually going to give you the freedom that you're looking for? Because the salary will never do that. Sorry.
Right.
So
they're just doing these side projects, just pure passion projects. They're more interested in them, even though they might seem like a lower level task or job, but it's just pure joy.
Exactly. And I think that's the other thing too. I think that people will categorize, I know for a long time, I was defined by the companies that I work for. I have a really impressive resume when you look at it from that perspective. Sure, I've worked at top Fortune 50 companies, but that's not who I am. Right? It was kind of like sucking the juice out of you, right? You're just constantly in that grind. And so it's like, if you took that same energy and used that for yourself to create the relationships, to take to businesses to the next level, then what could you actually achieve doing it that way? And it's not for everybody. Right. Absolutely not for everybody, because it's not easy. It's hard work. But at the same time, it's like I can wake up in the morning, at 5 and then take a nap at 10 and then get up again at 1. Those kinds of things are important to me at this point in my life.
Yeah. That time freedom, the autonomy.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think also, the other part is now I go back, I still consult and work with a lot of corporate entities, and mid to senior level people. And it's what I made in an annual salary, on the base side, not even base plus commission, is now a consulting fee for a project, So it's because I can do that stuff with my eyes closed. Wow. So why would I cap myself at that salary when I can just do it for a project?
So you're saying you'd make the same just for one project that you could make
right
for that whole salary
year, or some people will make for a whole year on a base salary without commission. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you're the owner, you make all the money if you don't have any other costs. If it's a consultant where you're literally just giving your expertise, there's not many operating costs for that.
Right. Exactly. I think there's high value in really sitting down with yourself and being like, what do I do really, really well?
Right.
You know, and it's like, monetize it, you know?
Yeah. That seems like the best way to earn money is just from your mind, because it's just you sharing your expertise, your wisdom that you've built up.
Yeah. I mean, your mind, but also combined with like, what's that skill? Because, you know, there's a woman out there, I always forget her name, but I think I always forget her name. But anyway, she, I believe, was working in publishing on like project management, but her biggest skill was that she actually loved doing Excel spreadsheets, like loved it. Right. So she's not, you know, she made that during the pandemic into a multi 8-figure business.
Wow.
Teaching people about Excel, showing people, doing shortcuts, like doing all this stuff. So I'm like, anything can be monetized. There was another example that I heard the other day that I was like, dang, you know, it's a part of it is, yes, you're like, if you want to educate and teach and be in that sphere, but it's also like, what are you doing that people don't want to do? Like, I'll hire a chef all day, every day. I'll hire somebody to clean my house. Like, I'll hire people that are doing the things that I don't like doing, right? And find the person that's an expert that loves it, right? Closet organizers. It seems like that's not a big deal, but it is. And people charge a lot of money for that. And I will do it all the time because I hate it. I just am like whatever. I don't even, you know, it doesn't even like faze me because I prefer somebody else that loves to do that to come in here and do it.
And so if you outsource all the things that you don't have a passion for, you're not focused on, or doesn't bring in money, then that means you have more of your time to do the thing that's most important. Right.
And to make more money.
Right. All right. So you left the corporate world at some point. You had a moment. Briefly talk about that decision point to start your own thing, change your life in that way.
So the last company that I worked for closed their office. They moved me out here. They closed the office about 1.5 years after. It was a whole big thing. They were like, do you want to move to Mexico? And I was running. So I moved from New York to California to run the whole West Coast, Brazil and Mexico. And so I was traveling between LA, New York, Brazil, and Mexico. And then 1 year into it, they said, we're gonna divide the business that's coming out of the California office back to Miami and to Mexico. They were like, do you want to move to either one of those places? I'm like, neither one of those places was exciting for me. And so they closed the office. I took, I don't know, I think 2 or 3 weeks. I went to Cabo, hung out, came back, made 7 phone calls, and enrolled my first 7 clients to a mastermind. And I basically just called old clients, old friends from the industry that I was in for 25 years and said, hey, listen, you know, you've been watching my journey. I moved from New York to LA. And there's a whole story behind the move also, because I claimed it, right? I had just gone through a divorce, you know, all this stuff. I didn't have kids or anything. And so I was just like, somebody asked me 5 months before I moved, somebody asked me, what's your big dream? I said, I want to move to the West Coast. I want to live by a beach. I want to look at palm trees every day. I want to like walk out and be on the beach. Like I want to just like be, and that literally I'm going to walk out later. Well, it's been raining in Florida, so I'm not going to go today. This is like muddy, but you know, I'm right here. And so that journey, and this is at the very, like, I feel like the onset of social, the way we see it social today, but people were following what I was doing. And because of my age and all that stuff. I mean, I moved to California in my 40s. I'm about to be 53 in February. And, so I led with my own personal story, my own personal journey. And I said, hey, if you're burnt out, you feel like there's other things that you could be doing, I know I can coach you through that. And so do you want to join my mastermind? And I had 10 women in my first mastermind. And that was it. That was like a couple of weeks after I left that. And then that's how it started. Like, I didn't even think about it.
Okay. So if you can even remember, because I know you're probably just killing it doing sales like you do, but do you remember the very first one and kind of zoom in if you can?
Yeah.
About,
I mean,
like the feelings of that process.
Yeah. I mean, I had always hired coaches. I always had a coach. Like I had a coach for my relationship. I had a coach for my fitness and health and wellness. I had a coach for my business and my career. So I've always had coaches, and people were always telling me, you would be a great coach. And I was like, okay. Like, and I just believed it. And so when I made the first phone call, it's so funny because I'm still connected with that very first woman. And I just said, this is what it's going to be. And I said, oh, we're going to do it for 6 months. It's going to be this much. And I really want to support you in your journey and help you do all the things that you want to do, because I've already done it. So just to kind of give you an idea also, is that up to that point, there had over the probably the 3 to 5 years prior to that, I had taken a sabbatical. I had left. I had paid myself my salary. I had paid myself my salary and took the exact same number as a travel budget to travel the world. So I took a year off to travel the world. Okay. Yeah. So I created my own like exit strategy and exit plan, so that I could take that time off. So it was like a gap year in my career.
So that's ending the corporate life. Taking a gap year?
No, not at all. This was like even before that, because I knew I needed a break. So this leads into the end, because I think for me, where Prosper Where Planted comes from now is from the fact that I actually took a break from my corporate life. But taking that break was because I was, earning income hand over fist. It was a lot easier because my commission checks were, 6 figures. And so, and I talk a lot about that kind of stuff too, because it does make a difference to how you plan an exit, right? Or how you plan a gap year. And so we get to be really specific about, like, we don't want to put anybody in a compromising situation financially. We want to say, you can do this and we can plan it for you. So I had already done those things. So they watched me as I, was spending a month in India. I did my Eat, Pray, Love and came back and, like I never. Yeah.
I'm sorry, pause real quick, because on my end, the video cut out right when you said, like you're taking a gap year, and then I'd ask you the question and you started to explain deeper. So back up like 15 seconds. And then I added a marker so I can kind of edit it together a little bit. Okay. So just back up a little bit on this last part of the story, and then we'll just keep going.
Okay, perfect. I'm probably moving around too much.
Oh, no, not at all.
I get really excited. Because some of the stuff I don't even talk about hardly ever. And then it comes up and I'm like, whoa, I can't believe I did that. So, okay. So my gap year was basically, so the reason why I was able to call a lot of these women and say, hey, I want to support you in your process, was because like, let's say 5 years prior or a little bit more even, I had created an exit strategy to take a gap year so that I could travel the world. And so I took, the income that I had, the commissions, the base salary, I paid myself my salary. I gave myself a travel budget. It was a huge travel budget because I was like, at that point, I wasn't in my 20s. I wanted to stay in hostels. I wanted to stay in 5-star hotels and really great houses. Yeah. So it was a different experience. But it became really easy for me to make those phone calls when I then started my coaching practice, because these women already knew what I had done.
Yeah.
And so in that perspective, I was teaching them something that I had already done and experienced that was separate of my actual my actual career. Right. It was separate because at that point, I wasn't necessarily career coaching them as much as dream coaching them, right? Or manifestation coaching them, when that wasn't really a word that I was using back then. Back then, it was just like, let's go live your biggest, best life.
Okay.
Right.
And so you
And
focus
so,
in on helping them specifically launch like a passion project as a business?
yeah, either passion projects or like really get clear on what they wanted to do. And so, meaning not necessarily only career. It was like many of them were single moms. Many of them, had wanted to move out of, at the time, half of them lived in New York. A couple of them wanted to move. They saw me do my
Okay.
move. So things like that. And
Yeah.
I firmly believe that it all lines up, obviously, right? Because you need to have the right career with the right salary to make the right move, or the passion project, or whatever that looks like. And so it was much more all encompassing. Whereas now I'm really like, let's maximize your career, whatever that looks like. And career for me is inclusive of, like, my career right now is being a coach, right? So it's much more inclusive than not. And so that's kind of how that all started. And so when woman after woman after woman said yes, it was exciting, because I knew that at that point I was bringing value, but it was even more so the fact that the 10 to 12 years prior to that I had created these relationships with these women that we had multiple millions of dollars of deals happening between us because of our roles in different companies, that they trusted me.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is underestimated. Yeah. Sorry. No. And I think that that's the biggest thing that's really being underestimated these days.
Trust.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the difference between getting a corporate sale, how that feels, versus getting a sale for your own business, and if there was a difference for you there.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because, like, I'm trying to think. I feel like the corporate sale, I mean, I guess I can go back to like my favorite. I think probably my favorite corporate sale was working with a big beverage company, and I was at a digital media company, and we were launching a category. We were launching the music site of this digital media company with a big beverage company. And I just like, I don't need to, I don't know. I sometimes don't even mention the names, but it's big. It was like, it was big. It was like, I think it was like a $10 million deal or something. And now it wasn't solely me. And I think the other thing that it was, what was different for me in corporate is that I never acted like, oh, it was me. Like, I did that. You know what I mean? Like, it was always the collective, right? I mean, it took a lot of people to get a big deal like that done, both from the brand side to the marketing side, to the researchers, to the technical people, all of that stuff, right? A lot of meetings, a lot of contracts, legal. And so while either myself or somebody else, we would get accolades for it, it was like I was always the one that was like, no, let's bring everybody to the table, because this was a collective initiative. Just because I get the commission check doesn't mean that I'm the only one that had anything to do with it. I'm just really good on stage, and anything is a stage. This is a stage. If I'm in front of 10,000 people, it's a stage. Like, it doesn't really matter for me. I'm really good on stage. And I know that, but I'm not good at, like, okay, the project management side, or the, like, keeping track of, you know what I mean? Like, so that's why I really believe that it's a collective effort. And I think that's, learning that industry and understanding it was a huge accomplishment for me, because I never imagined ever working for some of these companies that I ended up working for, when originally I went to school for, like, special education and fashion, which are two totally different things too. That's my personality though, right? But then having my own, it was really exciting to have my own sale, because it was based on something completely different, right? It was really something that was in support and of service. And I believe that servant leadership is what actually creates long-lasting relationships. It creates abundance in every area of your life. And that I really, truly want to support others in creating whatever it is that they want to create. Whereas in corporate sales, it's like, we're helping somebody sell their sugary drink. We're helping somebody buy a car, and that's fine. And we need that to, that's how the world goes around. But when you think about the difference between what that feels like in my mission, this part feels way better.
Yeah, because you're helping change people's lives directly, especially with your style of business, but also you're getting to experience that fully because you're the main person you contact and seeing the change.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And is the main way that you contact people or make connections with people, is it phone calls or events? Let's get into some of the kind of the tactical side of it. I think we've covered a lot of the strategic and kind of overall philosophy of how you approach sales, but what are some of the little tactical granular stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, when I started, again, I go back to my relationships. I didn't have to, I don't do any paid advertising. I don't do anything like that. I hardly network. I joke all the time. I'm like, I don't even like to leave my house, but I really do. But no, at the beginning, it was very much I knew these people, right? I know them intimately. And so it was a connected conversation. Then as I continued to grow and expand, it became that in speaking engagements or people would refer me. I love doing keynotes. I love doing workshops for corporate, companies. And so some of my clients would have me come in and do a workshop. And so then people from that would come out of it. And then, coming from New York to California, I had to start really networking, more heat, a lot of the people that I was calling, all of my clients are basically East Coast based. And then here I'm like, oh, wait, how do I expand my network? And so, going to the networking events and all that stuff, which I just feel like, it's hit or miss. But I think the consistency of there's one, I go to the Malibu Chamber and they specifically have something for women. And I do that because I'm pretty exclusively working with women. I have had a couple of male clients, but, I'm really almost exclusively women of color, 40 to 45 plus, is who I work with because they're already mid to senior level in their careers. They're feeling the burnout. They're feeling like they need something else. And so, but yeah, so networking. So
does that help you? Sorry, go ahead.
No. Okay, no, it's all right. I'm just trying to think in my head. I was like, wait, what else?
Yeah.
I don't do anything paid.
Okay. And then, so cold calling, or not really cold calling, it sounds like you started off just following up with your existing relationship. So that's just calling, texting, whatever. And then you still do the physical networking. You said just out of a discipline, almost, it sounds like, just because you know that it kind of opens up some opportunities eventually. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Church is another one for me.
Church. Okay.
I love church. I love it. I joined, there's a couple of different groups in there. And so I joined those and so, I just kind of let God lead that way and, and that's great too. Cause you can really
I think that's probably I think that's probably an underrated kind of place to network. Cause there's already you have some philosophical, religious similarities. So you have that base level connection, and then that can lead to a lot of other, business relationships outside of that. Not that it's for that, of course, but I've heard that with other people too.
I think it's so. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that it's not that it's for that, because I'm like, is it though? I'm like, I think it is actually. I really do believe in God placed me in, because I literally just left one church and started going to a different church. And I firmly am a believer of God took me to this new place because I get to do more business and bigger business with this community, because they are bigger thinkers and they're doing more and they're more inclusive. And I also believe that the Bible is the best business book in the world. Right. And he wants us to abundance. And I think the philosophy that some people carry, and even my family included, is you shouldn't talk about money and you shouldn't want money. And I'm like, well, if you want me to do more in the church, you're going to want me to make I just had a friend that wrote a $500,000 check to his church. Like
right.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you like, I'm sorry.
Is that a good or bad thing? Right.
That, Yeah. And so that's the part.
Because if you follow the principles in the Bible, it leads to abundance, because it talks about making wise choices in Proverbs and everything. It's like, if you follow the actual principles, it does lead to abundance, because you're not going to be a fool. You're going to be making wise choices. And if anything, well, I don't want to start condemning.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, but yeah, I see what you're saying there. Yeah, it does line up with the principles.
Mm-hmm. That's a good podcast episode. You can borrow that one if you want. I'll let you white label that subject for me.
Are you poor and going to hell? Well, listen in. That's terrible. Okay, so church is another place to make connections. You said like the commerce groups in town.
Chamber of Commerce are great.
Chamber of Commerce.
I mean, I think honestly, it's like if you have a good group of people around you and you're discerning about the people that you have around you, that they will promote you. I have a really good friend that from church, and she sent me someone and they enrolled and they're from like IT, so you just get the most like random connections. But I think it's also because of the depth and breadth of the connections and who you are and what you stand for. I think if you're authentic and in integrity in what you're doing, like it'll come.
Yeah. I usually have a rapid fire question section, but I know you got to run and bounce to another call here soon, so we're not going to get too deep into that.
Yeah, let's do it. We got plenty. Okay. Oh my God, it went by so fast. No, let's go.
It's getting close. Let me see here, because we covered a good bit, and is that basically the only tactics you'd say you use, just building relationships at the different networking events and personal relationships? And then what tools do you use to follow up? Like LinkedIn. I think I connected with you on Polywork.
Yeah.
Different social media tools.
Yeah. I follow people on Insta. It's my favorite spot is Instagram. But I just connect with people and get their phone number and call them. I mean,
okay. So you end up DMing people over social media.
Huh?
You'll DM people over social media sometimes.
Not really. I mean, I like to follow people on social media just to kind of get a depth and breadth of who they are. And if that's, if we're in alignment and if that's where their preferred communication avenue is. But I don't know. I have people's phone numbers. I call them. I don't make it too complicated. I don't even send people like
somebody's house.
Website I don't even use. I don't do I'm going to probably to scale to the level that I want to scale to this year. I'll end up implementing more things, but begrudgingly.
All right. I'm going to do a quick yes or no section now. Let's start off with traditional marketing, direct marketing category, face-to-face meetings. You've already talked about that. That's a big yes. Telemarketing, phone calls. Or I guess the better term there would be, do you do cold calls?
No, never.
Okay. So you always make some kind of connection before dialing somebody.
Oh, yeah. Okay. 1,000%.
All right. Direct mail, snail mail. Send a postcard.
Does that exist? No, I don't even know.
Yeah, people still use it. So that's a no.
That's a hard no. I literally got something from my dad the other day. He mailed me all these boxes of books, and I was like, I can get this information on the World Wide Web. Like, stop sending me stuff.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to answer all these next ones probably, but other forms of print media, newspaper ads, magazine ads.
No.
Bulletin board, pin board, notice board, like at a community thing, putting a little business card up or anything.
No.
Okay.
No.
Broadcast media, TV or radio ads.
No, to me, no.
Okay.
And it's funny because I come from all of those mediums, right? So I worked in radio, I worked in print, I worked in direct mail, I worked in all of them. And they have value for many clients and they have value for many entrepreneurs. I think when you're looking at like brick and mortar, a lot of those things work. I think for service based and what I do, if it's not in a connection based avenue, it's just not going to happen. Because people aren't just like, oh, let me hire a 6-figure coach. That's not how it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So I think that's the difference too. It's like, are you a plumber, or right. Do you really looking at changing somebody's life? Right? Do you do roofing or landscaping, or do you do you know what I mean? So I think that's when you really get to think about it from that perspective. I mean, even
depends
like if you're a trainer here, everybody's a trainer. And so what do they do? They stand out on the beach, they go to the park, and they put this little board up, and you can take a little, like
fitness trainer.
Yeah. And,
okay.
Yeah. But like, I can't really do that.
Right.
I mean,
so a lot of this stuff. Yeah. You never know.
Just sit up there and be like, hey, you want some advice?
I bet it would work, especially with your personality. I bet you could bring some people in. Probably go viral.
I'm actually really socially awkward. People don't believe me. I'm super introverted. It's not even funny, but I love to talk about what I like, this stuff.
Yeah. So loyalty cards, physical coupons. Again, I think that relates to other business models.
Yeah.
All right. What about, let's move over into digital marketing. You've talked about a little bit of that already. Yeah. Do you have your own website?
I do. I don't ever direct anybody to it, because I did it a long time ago, and I get to update all of that piece of it. It is definitely part of my scaling growth process for now.
Yeah.
And so
do you blog and put content out on there?
No.
Okay. Do you have like do you have like a lead gen form?
No. Oh, I do. Okay. I do have one of those, which I don't really use either. But I don't know. My thing is really just let's connect. And people who want to know more about me, it's Instagram all day, every day. Play in Instagram, and I'm like, so that's where I'll see updates quicker.
So do you use any agency type services to help with any of that? Or are you doing everything yourself?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, awesome. So that means there's no SEO, paid advertising of any kind, anybody managing your social post? Okay.
No. So if people message me directly, they're going to get me directly. And again, this can all change probably into the middle of this year. It will probably change into the middle of this year because of where I want to go. But I've mapped out my time so that I can do the stuff that I like to do.
Do you use any tools? Do you use any tools to help you post on social media, or do you just do it directly per platform?
No, I mean, Canva is a great resource. I love Canva for everything. I think Canva is just absolutely like the best resource out there, and it's worth doing the paid version of that because it gives you so many outlets. So going back to the very beginning of our conversation, one of the things that I really value is utilizing your creative side of your brain. And so for me, that's what Canva does, right? So it's like I get the journals and I get all the stickers and I do all that stuff because it gets my juices flowing, right? Being on podcasts, my goal this year is to be on 300 podcasts. And I think you're already number 10. I have to like make my list. You're like 9 or 10 already. I know.
My goal is I'm just like 120. So I gotta step it up, man.
Yeah.
I got rookie numbers compared to you.
Well, no, I mean, that's just a goal. I haven't done that yet. So I'm just like, let's go. Let's do it.
That's awesome. All right. And as far as posting on the platforms, so you use that to help you create content. And then do you schedule the posts out with any kind of tools?
It just depends. No, I don't use, I haven't done.
Buffer
no, I don't. I just kind of do it. Yeah. Because my system is just like, I wake up, do my morning ritual. I already probably the night before have thought about what I want to say the next day. I have kind of like themes. I'm very much, and I get to streamline all of this. Somebody's going to be out there and be like, that's too much work or whatever. And it's a lot. But at the same time, it's like, I have my whole lot of last year was be as authentic and real as myself, right? And try to get things that are from my heart so that I can really understand my voice that much better. And it's constantly shifting. As the more I read, the more people I interact with, the more studies that I do. I did 2 Bible studies back to back this year, and they were amazing. And they totally shifted a lot of how I think and how I communicate and how I interact. And I think if we're constantly evolving in that way, then I get to do it. And who's going to, be able to do that for me?
Right. And when you put out content on Instagram, do you repurpose that same content for other platforms?
I'm going
like
to
TikTok,
start to.
LinkedIn, and all the others?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think again, also a firm believer of, don't reinvent the wheel on every platform. And so wherever it works, make it work. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. But you're mostly just active on Instagram at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my preferred. I mean, I've been on LinkedIn for 120 years, so. Like, that's my number one social media.
Yeah.
It's hard. And it's funny. I really do look at LinkedIn as the professional business service. And a lot of people, I think, have recently adopted the LinkedIn, creating a LinkedIn profile or using it like traditional social media. And I don't believe that it should be looked at that way or treated that way. Right. Okay. I have, I really believe that it's like, okay, you want to put your best foot forward in a space of professionalism and corporate and all that stuff. It's not like a hookup site. It's not like a vacation picture site. Like, I'm like,
right.
what do you know what I mean? Like, where's the value?
So would you say that you get leads from social media directly? Like, do you get the most from Instagram or people contacting you directly, or is it always you outreach? No. Okay.
No, I get leads. If I've gotten anybody that doesn't know me, they'll come from either hearing me on a podcast or an interview or somebody else's social media or speaking engagements. That's the number one. That's really? For me, has number one. Yeah. Outside of me and my direct, but I think the thing is we have to remember is that I'm very focused on a small niche that I have a deep relationship with. And so I don't need like random people on social media. I want them to know who I am for sure. But more times than not, I'm not going to respond to many of the people because I'm not going to go below 40 and I'm not going to really work with men. And so,
that's awesome. Turning people away nonstop. Okay. So speaking engagements and then people like referrals from other people and then podcasts.
I'm amping up podcasts because I really feel like that's people, the people that I'm going to be working with, this is how they're spending their time, is listening, hearing people, like they're not scrolling as much, right? They're not like just, kind of scrolling on social media. They're really wanting to learn and wanting to expand, where they are. They're super frustrated where they are and they want to hear a message, so I kind of think of podcasts as like little mini sermons.
Yeah.
If it's a good conversation.
So you've given me a lot of time and I appreciate it so much. Why don't we end it with you giving like a talk to the camera moment where you're talking to your target audience and giving them that pitch for your service and just telling them how to get a hold of you.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, for anybody that's out there that's listening or that's watching, is that if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like you completely have lost your passion and your purpose, I want you to know that there is something else on the other side that you can dig into that creates an opportunity for you to feel like you have value still, that you can make the second half of your life the best half. My mission is to support women release themselves from financial concerns so that they can say yes more than they say no. And that doesn't just mean having a really good job. That means having freedom, time freedom to do the things that you want and make money doing the things that you could do with your eyes closed. And that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun.
It has.